In a charged episode of a nationally televised American talk show, the political atmosphere reached a boiling point as Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and conservative pundit Mark Levin faced off in a showdown that ignited instant viral fervor. Both figures are known for their commanding intellects and unwavering presence, but what unfolded was more than a clash of ideologies. It was a strategic takedown that reshaped the public conversation on media debates, accountability, and the potency of preparation. What stunned viewers and set social media ablaze wasn't the usual shouting match or ideological rhetoric. It was Jasmine Crockett's surgical brilliance as she turned the debate on its head by calmly quoting from Mark Levin's own published work, right in the heat of confrontation. With the poise of a seasoned litigator and the precision of a chess master, Crockett neutralized Levin's aggressive stance by using his own words as the foundation of her argument. What began as a tense ideological exchange quickly evolved into a defining cultural moment. Levin entered the debate with fire, assertive, dominant, and confident in his delivery. But Crockett didn't meet fire with fire. She met it with steel. Her strategy was clear: out-research, out-maneuver, and outclass. As Levin made claims, she listened. And when the moment was right, she opened his book, calmly read a passage, and let the contradiction speak for itself. The audience was silenced, then erupted. It wasn't a sound bite. It was a seismic shift. Unlike the typical performance-driven theatrics of political TV, Crockett's rebuttal wasn't emotionally charged or defensive. It was methodical, researched, and devastatingly effective. Where others might raise their voice or interrupt, she held her ground in silence until her moment came. She let facts speak louder than volume, and the impact was undeniable. Levin, known for his rapid-fire commentary and forceful presence, visibly shifted. His voice faltered, his responses lost clarity, and his once dominant posture slipped into defensiveness. Crockett had not just cornered him with superior preparation, she had disarmed him using his own intellectual arsenal. Viewers watched as the dynamic reversed, not with a dramatic outburst, but with a quiet revelation. This was more than a debate win. It was a blueprint for how intellectual rigor and emotional intelligence can coexist on a national stage. Crockett's refusal to stoop to theatrics served not only as a defense mechanism, but also as a form of silent authority. Her calm demeanor in the face of provocation flipped the script on what political strength looks like. The symbolism extended beyond the words she read. In a media climate saturated with outrage and performance, Crockett reminded audiences that accountability still matters. Books, as repositories of deeply considered thoughts, carry a weight that social media posts and sound bites often lack. By holding Levin to the standard of his own writing, she resurrected the value of intellectual consistency. She didn't accuse him of hypocrisy, she proved it. Social media exploded within minutes. Hashtags like #Crockett Clapback and quote him verbatim trended across platforms. Reaction videos, political commentary, and remixes spread like wildfire. But the virality wasn't based on sensationalism. It stemmed from the undeniable appeal of seeing someone calmly, logically dismantle an opponent in real time with undeniable truth. And then there was the deeper narrative, a black woman holding her own against a high-profile conservative man in a space historically dominated by male voices. Crockett's performance was not only a triumph of intellect, but also a challenge to the unspoken norms of who gets to dominate discourse. Her restraint, clarity, and authority disrupted the expectations of both supporters and critics alike. This moment sparked broader conversations about how we conduct public discourse. It reignited interest in the value of primary sources, the ethics of debate, and the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership. Crockett's tactic wasn't simply a power move. It was a recalibration of what constitutes a meaningful exchange. It also became a media milestone, In a landscape where shouting often drowns substance, Crockett's cool-headed strategy broke the mold. Her clarity cut through the static, offering a moment of integrity in a space where performance often trumps truth. And it worked. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was authentic. Her approach created a ripple effect. Political commentators began to reevaluate the tone and tactics of televised debates. Influencers praised the moment as a return to intellectualism. Communication experts hailed it as a masterclass in rhetorical strategy. Educators clipped the exchange for classrooms. This wasn't just a viral clip, it was an educational tool. The contrast between Crockett and Levin became a case study. One raised his voice, the other raised the bar. One aimed to dominate the room, the other sought to elevate the conversation. And in doing so, Crockett didn't just win an argument, she reset the standard. In a time when partisan battles often overshadow thoughtful engagement, this moment reminded viewers that preparation, poise, and principle still have power. Crockett's composure was more than a strategy. It was a statement. A statement that clarity defeats chaos, that accountability matters, and that the truth, when wielded correctly, is the loudest voice in the room. This wasn't just a political victory, it was a cultural shift, a moment that will be remembered, not for its volume, but for its vision. Crockett didn't just silence an opponent. She inspired a generation to value substance over spectacle. And in doing so, she didn't just change the conversation, she owned it. It was more than just a media moment. It was a cultural recalibration, one that forced audiences to pause and truly reconsider how they engage with political commentary and what traits they admire in public figures. At its core, this wasn't just about Jasmine Crockett delivering a sharp rebuttal. It was about revealing the carefully masked performance that defines much of modern political television. Mark Levin, known for his brash delivery and no-holds-barred ideological attacks, suddenly found himself disarmed. His usual dominance, built on volume and confrontation, was dismantled not with louder words but with quieter strength. For the first time in recent memory, viewers witnessed something rare on television. A battle of ideas that wasn't staged for ratings, but rooted in facts. And it changed everything. The visual was unforgettable. A seasoned commentator visibly rattled. A calm, prepared opponent holding the floor with confidence. In that single image, Crockett didn't just win a debate. She shattered the illusion. That shouting equals strength. She demonstrated that political commentary doesn't have to descend into tribal warfare to be powerful. That segment didn't trend because of chaos. It trended because it was clean, because it was clear. And in the days that followed, something remarkable happened. Conversations began, not just on cable networks or op-ed columns, but in classrooms, community centers, dinner tables. People began asking a new question. What if political discourse could evolve? What if the model wasn't dominance through volume, but persuasion through clarity? Crockett's approach tapped into a growing fatigue, the public's exhaustion with partisan brawls and emotional theatrics. Her style offered an antidote, precision, evidence, and a refusal to be baited. It wasn't about dunking on her opponent. It was about standing her ground, with elegance and intent. Her demeanor challenged everything networks thought made for good TV. Suddenly, viewers weren't just entertained. They were inspired. Social media exploded, not just with applause, but with introspection. People began reflecting on their own conversations, how they debate, how they listen. Crockett's exchange didn't just make headlines, it made ripples. Professors referenced it in lectures. Parents discussed it with teens. Activists circulated clips as a masterclass in controlled intellectual confrontation. What she showed wasn't difficult to replicate. That was its genius. She didn't hide behind lofty jargon or insider knowledge. She did something much harder. She made truth accessible. By calmly using Levin's own statements against him, she delivered the rarest of modern media moments, an exchange that educated as it captivated. Her performance became a mirror, and in that mirror, both hosts and viewers saw what was possible. This was not just a personal victory. It was a seismic challenge to the status quo of political media. It exposed how often airtime is filled with noise rather than nuance. And for perhaps the first time in a long time, the audience preferred the latter. The clip didn't need viral outrage to gain momentum. It earned it with substance. Levin, a master of verbal warfare, was suddenly grappling with the consequences of his own approach. The very strategies that once secured him airtime, interruptions, indignation, ideological grandstanding, now looked outdated. In contrast, Crockett's calm, linear arguments cut through like a scalpel. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the bar. And that's where the legacy begins. Her success challenged every aspiring public figure to think differently, to believe that intellect is not a liability, but a weapon. She didn't overpower. She outthought. And in doing so, she redefined what winning looks like. That moment reminded us all that influence isn't always loud, that credibility isn't found in the decibel level of a retort, but in its depth. Crockett's performance sent a message to producers and networks. The public is ready for more. More civility, more substance, more actual thinking on live television. And it wasn't just the political class that took notice. Journalists, academics, and cultural critics began citing the moment as a turning point. They called for reimagined formats, panels built around discourse, not spectacle. And above all, for the return of listening as a vital component of dialogue. What made Crockett's takedown so unforgettable wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Her timing, her posture, her refusal to spiral into a shouting match, that style, controlled, direct, unshaken, offered a model not just for political commentary, but for every difficult conversation viewers might face in their own lives. She taught people that strength doesn't have to be abrasive. That grace under fire is not weakness, it's mastery. And most of all, that truth still has a place in media. Her strategy showed that the facts don't need fanfare to be powerful. They just need to be delivered with confidence and clarity. An age where talking over someone is seen as victory, Crockett's refusal to engage in theatrics rewired expectations. She didn't flinch. She didn't retaliate. She simply held her ground. And that restraint, that discipline, that is what made the segment unforgettable. The impact of that debate extends far beyond the screen. It invites a reassessment of our media diet. Are we consuming commentary that challenges us or just confirms us? Are we valuing who shouts the loudest or who thinks the clearest? And most importantly, what kind of voices do we want elevated in this country? If this moment is any indication, the answer is shifting. Crockett reintroduced a style of debate that many thought had been lost to time. And in doing so, she inspired not just admiration, but aspiration for a better discourse, a better media. Culture, a better way forward. She didn't just take down an opponent, she lit a path.